Hello, my name is Chris, and this is going to be the final entry in the tutorial for the PlayMaker vertical shooter. In this one, we're going to add some sound effects and some music, and then we're just going to clean up a couple other things and make a build and then try it all out. So I'm going to include download links for an explosion sound effect and a shot sound effect if you want to use these. And for the music, just find your own WAV file and stick it into your project, and you can use your own music for that. So let me go ahead and create an object for the background music. So I'm just going to create an empty object here in the scene. I'm just going to call it music. And then I'm going to set that to 0. And I'm going to add a component to it. I'm going to add an audio source. You can just type audio in the search up here and then it'll show up. And this audio source allows you to pull in a sound clip. So I'm going to pull in this music I have, and I know it's kind of loud, so I'm actually going to set the volume at 0.5. And I want it to play on awake, so that's already checked here. So that means as soon as this level starts, it'll play, and I want it to loop because it's a looping music track. And this is just a piece of music I made in LMMS, but you can use anything. So let's test this out and see if it's working. Alright, so that's working. So now I need to add sound effect for shots and for explosions, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to add a couple more objects here. So let's create an empty game object. I didn't mean to make it a child there. And we'll call it sound effects shot. So we're going to add a component to this. We're going to add another audio source component to this. And we're going to put our shot sound effect in there. I don't want it to play on awake. Instead, we're going to trigger it with an FSM here. So the start FSM is going to be empty. So I'm just going to type empty. And it's just going to sit there whenever the object is loaded. And then I only want it triggered when another object sends it an event. So we're going to create a global event for this. And a global event is an event that other FSMs can see. And we're going to call it sound shot. And to make it global, you just click on this little check mark here, and that makes it global. So that just means other FSMs can find it and use it as well. And so we're going to add a global transition to this. We're going to do sound shot, which is the one we just created. And in here, we're going to do an audio play. Okay, so this is an action that will play the audio clip associated with this object or whatever object you put here under this section. So it's on the owner here. It's got the audio source, so we're just going to keep it at use owner. And we don't need to put anything in the audio clip here because it already has an audio clip associated with it, an audio sound. And then when it's finished, let me add a finish transition here. When it's finished, it's going to trigger this transition. And it's just going to go back to empty when it's done. Okay, so we'll call this play sound, and that should be ready to go. Now the reason I'm putting the sound effect on a different object other than the actual sound prefab, now you could put it on the sound prefab, the shot here. The problem with that is if this shot hits an object really close to you, it could despawn before the sound plays all the way through. And so you'd get a sort of stunted sound from it. But putting it on an object that is not itself, the sound can play all the way through every time. Although it will get interrupted if you happen to shoot another shot at this before the sound is done playing. But that's really okay. That's kind of expected behavior. Okay, so let's test it out. Okay, so I'm not hearing it. Let me take a look. All right, I'm not actually sending this event yet. So what I need to do is go to the prefabs and go to shot here. And for the prefab for shot, we're going to add a send event to this. Okay, so we just added a send event. We're not going to send it to self. We're just going to broadcast all with this one. So this is kind of a lazy way to handle things, but it's basically going to send this event to anybody who's listening. And the only person who's going to be, or the only object that's going to be listening is the sound effect shot. So we're going to send event, global events, sound shot. And you can see it shows up here because it's a global event. All right, so let's test it again. All right, there it is, so you can hear it. All right, so let's just duplicate this. I'm gonna hit Control D, and we're gonna make this one sound effects explosion. So it's gonna need a couple things. It's gonna need a different event here. We'll call it sound explo. We'll make that global. We're gonna add that transition here. And we'll get rid of the sound shot transition. So you just right click on it and you can hit delete transition. Make sure you right click on the transition itself. Okay. And this object is still pointing to the sound shot. We want to point to the sound explosion that I added here. Okay. So we want this to happen whenever the explosion particle effect plays. So let's go to our prefabs. Here's the particle hit I created for that. And we're just going to add a send event to this. Again, we'll do broadcast all. And we're going to send a global event, sound explo. All right, let's see if that works. There it is. And again, you can use whatever sound effects you want with this. I'll just include a couple in case you want to use those. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the sounds. Now I just wanted to do one more thing before we make a build of this, and that is add some camera fade-ins to each of the scenes just so they look a little more polished. So I'm going to go to our main camera here in the scene. This is the camera that's viewing all this. I'm going to add an FSM to it, and just in the start state, we'll call it fade in. And we're going to look for the action camera fade in. So there it is. And it's going to fade in over the course of a second. And really that's all you have to do here. So if I hit play, you'll see it starts black and it just fades in. And that's going to look a little bit cleaner. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to go to my scenes folder and we're going to add one of these for each of them. The game over screen goes by pretty quick. Let's see, it waits 2 seconds. Let's just make it 3 seconds. And for the main camera here, we're going to add that same thing. So we'll add an FSM, call it fade in, and add this camera fade in. And it's set to a second, that's fine. So if I hit play, you see it fades in. All right, so we'll save that, and we're going to add one more to the start scene. And we're just going to do the exact same thing. You can also add fade outs if you want. So on death, you could add a camera fade out and just wait until the camera fades out and then send the event to load the next level. All right, so I think that's good. So let's save that. Let's hit play. So that fades in. We're going to hit A to go to the game screen. And I still have that weird lighting error where the light doesn't show up correctly. But let's go ahead and die. Alright, so it loads the game over screen and that'll fade. And it just looks a little bit nicer to have those fades in there. Alright, so that is pretty much it for the project. Let me just save this, and then we're going to make a build. So when you go to build settings, you can see here it shows all the scenes that it's going to build, and I want all of these. You would only include the ones that you want, because you may have extra scenes floating around in your project. And just make sure the start scene is the first one here, because that'll be the first scene that it loads. Alright, so we're going to do a build and run. Just choose where you want it. I will put it under my G folder, and we'll just call it tutorial shooter. And now it's just going to go through and build that. And since I hit build and run, it's going to run as soon as it's finished here. So it'll just take a minute. I haven't actually tested this out, so we'll see how well it works. But yeah, this is a pretty small project, so it really shouldn't take too long. So even though this is going to be the final video I make for this tutorial, if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to see tutorials on, please feel free to just put a comment in the comment section, and I'll see if I can get to it. I think these tutorials are pretty good for just seeing how the entire process works out. But I think another thing that I'm going to do is make some shorter, like 2 or 3 or 4 minute tutorials that just show one aspect to make it a little bit easier to watch at one time. All right, so I'm going to run this. This is my full screen resolution here, and let's go ahead and play it. All right, looks pretty good so far. And you can see the lighting's fine when I make a build. For some reason, it's just a little bit weird when I'm working in the editor. Alright, so that's working. Alright, game over screen, and then it should go back to the start. Just to make sure that my score reset, I'm going to play it one more time. Everything seems to be working okay. It reset my lives, it reset the score. And then we'll go back to the main screen, and from there we'll see if the exit button works, because you can't really test the exit application from the editor. So I'm going to hit B, and it exited out. All right. Well, everything seems to work pretty well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.